You ever have one of those moments, a gut feeling that turns out to be spot on? Or you think of an old friend and bam, they call you out of the blue. For literally centuries, moments like these have made us wonder, what are the limits of the human mind? Today we're diving into the controversial field that tried to find out.
I mean, think about it. It's everywhere in our culture, from superheroes reading minds to ancient myths about seeing the future. But is any of it, real? Or is it all just fantasy? That single question is the entire reason a very strange field of study was born.
And that field is called parapsychology. The whole goal here was to drag these extraordinary claims out of the shadows and into the sterile light of a science lab. They wanted to use experiments, statistics, and hard data to prove what they called psi, which is just a cool catch-all term for things like telepathy, mind reading, and clairvoyance, which is seeing things you shouldn't be able to see.
And for a hot minute there, it really seemed like they were about to crack the code. The story really gets going in the 1930s, not in some spooky mansion, but at a very prestigious place, Duke University.
This is the man at the center of it all, J.B. Rhine. He was a psychologist, and he wanted to completely change the game. He was tired of ghost stories and anecdotes. He wanted numbers. Cold, hard, statistical evidence that could prove, once and for all, that psychic powers weren't just real, but that you could actually measure them.
So how did he do it? He and a colleague developed this beautifully simple experiment using what are now called Zener cards. Just 5 symbols. A sender would look at a card, a receiver, maybe in another room, would try to guess what it was. That's it. The simplicity was genius, really. It seemed like the perfect clean way to test for what they called extrasensory perception, or ESP.
Okay, and the math here is absolutely critical. With 5 cards, if you're just randomly guessing, you should be right about 1/5 of the time, 20%. The entire experiment was built on this one simple idea. If anyone could consistently, over thousands of trials, score significantly better than 20%, well, that would be proof of something extraordinary. And that is exactly what Rhine claimed he found. After running an incredible 90,000 trials, he went public and made this bombshell announcement. For the public, it was huge news. It felt like science had finally, officially, proven that psychic abilities were real.
But the rest of the scientific community slammed on the brakes, hard. Rhine's spectacular claims kicked off this huge wave of scrutiny, with researchers everywhere trying to figure out what was really going on in his lab at Duke.
And this really gets to the heart of the debate. On one side, you have Rhine holding up what looks like solid statistical proof of ESP. But on the other, you have a growing chorus of scientists saying, hold on, what you found isn't evidence of psychic powers. It's evidence of a flawed experiment.
So when other labs tried to replicate Rhine's amazing results, they just couldn't. They got nothing but chance. So the critics dug deeper, and they found all sorts of problems. A big one was sensory leakage. Turns out the Zener cards were often printed on cheap cardstock, and you could actually see the symbols right through the back if the light was right. Then there were subtle cues like reflections in the experimenter's glasses. And maybe the most damaging thing of all was selective reporting, what's called the file drawer problem. You only report your successes, and all the failed experiments, they just get stuffed in a file drawer never to be seen again. And here is the absolute kicker. As soon as other scientists made them put in stricter controls, like using screens so people couldn't see each other, or using better quality cards, the amazing psychic abilities vanished. The psi effect completely disappeared the moment you closed the loopholes.
The incredible story of J.B. Rhine and his Zener cards basically became the blueprint for the entire field of parapsychology. For more than a century now, it's been stuck in this exact same loop. A promising claim followed by a mountain of scientific criticism.
Seriously, the exact same issues, experiments that nobody else can replicate, little loopholes for sensory leakage, and a tendency to only publish the good results. These problems have haunted pretty much every major psi experiment, from the 1930s all the way to today.
And you can see this pattern in more modern experiments too. Take the Gansfeld experiment, which was supposed to test telepathy. Well, critics jumped all over it for potential sensory leakage and bad statistics. Or what about remote viewing, the military's attempt to test clairvoyance? It was totally undermined by subtle clues in the transcripts and, you guessed it, a failure to replicate. Even tests for psychokinesis, mind over matter, using random number generators were plagued by publication bias. It's the same story, just with different equipment.
So when you put it all together, this is why most of the scientific world calls parapsychology a pseudoscience. Number one, after more than a century, there is not one single experiment for psi that a neutral scientist can reliably reproduce. Number 2, the claims themselves just flat out contradict the fundamental laws of physics. And critically, when an experiment fails, the excuse is often that psi is just shy or elusive, which is a theory you can never prove wrong.
And this quote from physicist John G. Taylor really hits the nail on the head. This is the biggest hurdle of all. For telepathy or clairvoyance to be real, it would require some new kind of energy of force that we've never discovered, one that can carry complex information from one brain to another. And physicists are pretty clear. There is just no evidence that such a thing exists.
So where does that leave parapsychology today?
Well, let's just say its golden age of being funded by big universities and governments is long gone.
I mean, you can just watch the decline. After its peak at Duke, the university cut ties with the lab when Reiner retired. Then, in '95, the U.S. government shut down its infamous Stargate project because it never produced a single piece of useful intelligence. And even Princeton's famous Peer Lab, after 28 years of trying to prove psychokinesis, finally closed its doors. The founder himself basically admitted there was no point in staying open just to generate more of the same data.
And interestingly, out of the ashes of parapsychology, a totally different field has grown. It's called anomalistic psychology, and it asks a much different question. It's not trying to prove if psi is real. Instead, it asks, why do people believe in psi? It uses normal psychology to figure out why we have these strange experiences and why the idea of the paranormal is so compelling to us.
And if you're looking for the final word on the subject from the scientific establishment, this is probably it. A major report from the U.S. National Academy of Sciences looked at 130 years of research and came to a very clear conclusion. There is simply no scientific justification for the existence of these phenomena.
Which leaves us with one last really interesting question. The science seems to be settled, right? The evidence just isn't there. And yet, our fascination with it, our deep down desire to believe in hidden powers and secret connections, that's as strong as it's ever been. Why is that? Now that might be the real mystery worth exploring.